I like to create a variety of content, art, video games, sometimes music, comedy. So I'm going with something a bit different now, and these are topics I hope to revisit. I want to get into something a little more honest, a little more real. In this particular video, we are going to talk about planet Earth, the one and only, our humble home. This will be a review, a brutally honest, scathing review. Planet Earth, what went wrong? It's the question we've all been asking. It's very complicated. In order to think about actual history, you first have to think about free thinking. What does it mean to even be able to make observations about reality? We have been told a particular version of history, a false narrative about our past that has been peddled by the Roman Empire, England, and America. This false narrative has been spun, and it's been going on for thousands of years. It has its roots in ancient wealthy families, hidden bloodlines. The world we live on is a stage. The lines that divide countries create artificial division, fabricated conflict, just like the divide between Democrat and Republican, artificial drama that is perpetuated by the news. And what does this all have to do with our planet, our history? We have been caught in a psychological battle for our very consciousness. And you might think, oh, is he joking? Is this real? What are we talking about? I wish it was a joke. It's so bizarre that you think this has to be a joke. This simply cannot be real. But you try to talk with these people and you have to step back and say, oh, you really believe that everything is just fine on this planet, that this world is working out just the way it's supposed to. When you're born, when you're growing up, they tell you you can be a success.
Success. You'll feel different.
Yes.
Success. That's right.
You can be anything you want to be.
Listen to me closely. People can become whatever they want to be.
And then little by little, this tapestry of lies falls away. And all that is left is this truth that you have tried every conceivable option to the fullest. You gave 100% in every category: comedy, music, health and wellness, Buddhism, karate, martial arts, spirituality, going to the gym, whatever you like to do. You gave your best and you got nothing. The rich get richer and the poor get poorer. What the hell is going on? We live in a time where mental illness thrives.
Hit me one time. Hit me twice. Go!
That's right.
But mental illness has been thriving on Earth for thousands of years. It's nothing new. And when the term was invented, it was used against the very people who were trying to bring sanity, much needed sanity, to a planet of madness. A genuine prison planet. So let's take it back to the beginning and see, how did all this begin? Where exactly did things go wrong? This really bizarre theory has been thrown around recently that it actually began with Satanism, that our leaders apparently have been worshiping Satan the whole time. And it's kind of ironic because it feels like they've been worshiping Satan. They just accumulate more and more money in this nonsensical thirst for infinite artificial numbers in their bank accounts. Apparently, Freemasonry is connected to Satanism.
There is a global satanic religion that does operate aspects of cults around the world.
A global satanic religion?
Oh yeah, dude. Have you gone down the satanic ritual abuse rabbit hole? It is so dark. So what I'm referring to specifically are survivors giving survivor testimony on video, hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of them. Like, not like one guy came forward and said this, like there are whole support networks for these people. Like there are psychologists that specialize in SRA victims, satanic ritual abuse. And because you have to like treat them in a whole different way than a regular abuse victim, because the level of depravity and disgusting, like literal torture of children, like literal, so, your episode is so screwed now. But there's one in particular that this guy was on the Alondra Markman podcast, and I wish I could remember his name, and we don't even want to pull it up because it's so dark. And everyone should, watch it for themselves and judge it for themselves in terms of whether you think he's telling the truth or not. But personally, it's like you can look into his life, and this guy, like his whole life is based around him recovering from this essentially story of his childhood and abuse, and it looks far more likely that he's telling mostly the truth than entirely lies to me. And what he alleges in this interview that aired like a year ago or so, a little less, on Alondra Markman's podcast, is that he was born into a satanic family, of which there are many around the world, and that he was groomed from an early age to essentially be a Jeffrey Epstein type of character in a global satanic cult that is not all satanic, but the Satanists are a part of this sort of bigger network of crime and everything. And he alleges after that, he was being groomed to be an actor, and he froze up in his acting interview. And so he got shifted from the acting pathway, because these guys, like, there's a fuckload of money in this community, allegedly. It's tied into all of the global sex trafficking networks, because how do you think that global sex trafficking sort of gets all the handlers and gets all of the sort of like operatives that run it? Is you need people that were abused in order to run these things, because you need to be that kind of broken, like you need to be groomed to be able to run this without breaking it all.
Is this all like tied into like the Franklin scandal?
Similar, yeah. So he claims he met Jeffrey Epstein on 2 occasions. He claims that he was being groomed to essentially be a handler similar to Jeffrey Epstein. And he had a really lucid description that Jeffrey Epstein was an insanely good code switcher, is what made Jeffrey unique, that he could be completely normal businessman, like banker guy right now, and then like literally turn the other way and be an absolute depraved, abusive monster, and then like right back on like the drop of a pin. And that's what made him so unique in this guy's perspective. And he kind of like had his programming, his like trauma did not work correctly. And so rather than going that route, he became a breeder. And he alleges that he was sent to a compound in Mexico where he would breed with trafficked girls all day, every single day, for like 2 or 3 years. And they would just breed and breed and breed and breed. And he alleges that is because they were particularly interested in him because of his bloodline and his heritage as some sort of direct descendant of King Solomon.
Not, in fact, a trip to space, but actually a satanic ritual in disguise.
And supposedly there are white masons or white hats who are the elite that are trying to help us. But in general, Freemasonry has been about keeping secrets. It's this ancient religion. And so what does this ancient religion have to do with modern times? We're not religious people. And yet when you look across the planet, religion is everywhere. It's like we're living in this primitive time, but you don't want to break the news. You don't want to be the bearer of bad news. So you don't tell people. It's like, oh yeah, your God is wonderful. He can kill people or whatever, and like he can send everybody to hell, but we're God. I'm sure Yahweh was a great guy. It's like, I'm sure he deserved to be God. I'm sure he wasn't a pussy or an asshole or a jerk. I'm sure Yahweh was a great God who just liked to kill people for no reason and make everybody obey without question. Sure, he was a remarkable guy. And lots of people still believe in religion. And it's kind of tragic to be the bearer of bad news and be like, I'm sorry, but it's not just that your religion is fake. You've actually been worshiping Satan this entire time. You have this kind of mass unconsciousness where everybody is worshiping these ideas, whatever they see on the news. It's all religion. We're so susceptible to collective behavior. Apparently, all along, there was a more fascinating and exciting history to our planet. But there were cataclysms, there were events that were left out of the history book. Even Einstein signed off on the Adam and Eve story, a book about cyclical cataclysms, a book about magnetic pole shifts, and it gets censored, it gets canceled by the CIA, by whatever dorks are in control. It's kind of funny to learn about the CIA. JFK is famously known for saying, I want to destroy the CIA and break them into 1,000 pieces and throw them into the wind. It kind of sounds like what Vegeta said in Dragon Ball Z to Majin Buu. I'm going to break you into 1,000 pieces and throw you into the wind. And that's the kind of passion he felt.
You are a fool! I am going to crush you and throw you into the wind!
He was at war with the CIA, and then mysteriously he gets shot. And that wasn't even the only assassination attempt. There were multiple attempts. That was the only successful attempt. So what's up with the CIA? Why was JFK trying to shatter the CIA into 1,000 pieces? I don't care about the CIA. It's very misleading. They refer to themselves as intelligence, when they're really more like dogs who answer to their wealthy bosses, the oil corporations. You get the impression when you hear CIA that it's sort of like, oh, it's a cool secret organization, like something from the movie Men in Black or from Homeland, the TV show. And sometimes they accidentally blow up a wedding, like Carrie Matheson. It's like, why did you bring me to this wedding? To the place where I blew up the wedding? I didn't mean to. That was just an accident. And like, it's kind of traumatic for me to think about how I blew up the wedding. And they're painted as heroes who sometimes accidentally like blow up the wrong village, and they make important decisions under high pressure situations. And it couldn't be more the opposite. They were founded to be a spy organization to help against the Nazis and whatever history and what important history. But what ended up happening is they went to other countries and used bags of money to buy elections. That was the first thing they did. They helped to start the war against Gaza and Israel. So the CIA is known to the public as this spy organization.
We've set out to overthrow functioning constitutional democracies in over 20 countries. We manipulated elections in dozens of countries. We created standing armies and directed them to fight. We went after to organize ethnic minorities to encourage them to revolt. The first thing we did in Nicaragua was to go to the Mosquito Indians, who had never gotten along with the other people in Nicaragua very well, and give them more money than they had seen in the entirety of history, and arms and training and rationales and sanctuaries in Honduras, and sent them into Nicaragua to attack, kill, fight, rape, burn, pillage. And this has been a technique the CIA has used in Nicaragua, in Thailand, in Vietnam, in Laos, in the Congo, in Iran, Iraq with the Kurds, in different parts of the world. We created, trained, and funded death squads like the Treasury Police in El Salvador. And we've assassinated world leaders, including the United States President in 1963, and I'll get to that in more detail in just a moment. You can never be sure how many people are killed in the jungles of Laos or the hills of Nicaragua, but adding them up as best we can, we come up with a figure of 6 million people killed, minimum figure. It has to be more than that. These things are all done in countries of the third world where the governments don't have the power to force the United States to stop destabilizing the country and brutalizing their people.
In the CIA, we didn't give a hoot about democracy. I mean, it was fine if a government was elected and would cooperate with us, but if it didn't, then democracy didn't mean a thing to us. And I don't think it means a thing today. The true goal of the United States government is control. And they feel that if the United States did not control the governments of Latin America, then somebody else would. And the principle of government by the people, for the people, of the people, that is that's just silly.
And then there was this Disclosure Act at some point like 2012, and the CIA had to disclose all these documents. They were supposed to disclose all the things they were secretly up to. And they disclosed a lot, but a lot was redacted. One of the things disclosed was the Adam and Eve story, a very interesting book I already mentioned that I've been aware of for maybe 7 years now. I often quote this book. Talks about lost civilizations, but also includes a lot of interesting science and quite a lot of stuff that was declassified that you would consider to be science fiction, something almost supernatural. there's this whole story about this guy named Swan who they were training to like astral project and project his consciousness into specific locations, and then he saw things he wasn't supposed to see. And apparently they did this many times, and it was confirmed that it worked with not just him, but many people. And now they're saying that autistic people are telepathic, and they go to some place called like Blue Mountain where they all secretly meet or something like that. But beyond the supernatural fascinations, what's important is their use of money and the way they have been subverting the progress of society. The CIA is really a genuine menace to society, an organization of dorks and losers who answer to their bosses, who obey every command of the billionaires, of their warmongering masters. But it's not even all billionaires. And as someone who isn't wealthy, you might come to hate every single billionaire. But believe it or not, there are certain billionaires who are actually significantly worse than others. While no one should possess that much money, there's this trend to just be like, I hate all the billionaires. But there's certain billionaires who are just existing in this whole other dimension of madness. And there's this topic of the 12 ancient families. And this has to do with Rockefeller, Rothschild. There are some other ones such as Orsini, leaders like, let's have us rich elites, we understand each other. Why don't we work with each other and carry on this secret wealth? And I'm not a scientist, I'm not a historian, but I'm just a passionate human who's suffered at the expense of these stupid freaking rich people. Their fake products, their fake illnesses. There is a need for voices of truth, people to speak with emotion, to speak about what's really going on. They tell you emotion is bad because these people are imbeciles. They have no personality. They're NPCs. These are your leaders. And what I'm trying to say is that you go to work and you have a boss, and your boss has a boss, and your boss's boss has a boss. And the further you get up the food chain, the less brain matter there is. The less neurological activity, you might say. It all has to do with free money, inherited money. It can all be traced back. All the presidents are related to each other. JFK was a good president. He was a wealthy person who developed a conscience. But there are still things he did that I would say are ridiculous, but you can't blame him because he's influenced by this wealthy person behavior. It's the desire to conform. But he genuinely wanted to make the world a better place. Just like Abraham Lincoln. And that's why these people get assassinated. There's a certain point in life where you start to realize that the more good you do for the world, the less your name is going to be promoted in the public, and the more likely that the more you persist, the more likely it is that you're literally going to be eliminated. I was interested in this topic called biophotons 10 years ago. I thought it was very interesting science that explains how you can cultivate this natural energy, but it's also proven to be a real thing that exists. And it's not like chi or like whatever. It's that you have to like earn it, that you have to struggle for it. You don't have to be a great martial artist. Biophotons is a free energy. It's proven by scientists such as the German scientist Fritz Albert Popp. I knew about this 10 years ago. Nobody freaking cared. You start to realize that nobody fucking cares about actual science, about actual progress. Because the news is owned by this corporation called BlackRock. They own all the major news stations. That's why you hear people say, don't trust the mainstream media. I can't even decide if I want to talk about history or the present. It's just what went wrong on this planet. Where do you even begin? One thing I've just been loving it up, is that this idea that's been promoting on both TikTok and YouTube. It's been all the creators that I trust. It's been coming up like more often than you would think. This idea that apparently there's this ancient religion of Satanism that has to do with the planet Saturn and the worship of cubes. And it's connected to putting people in classrooms, putting people in boxes. All that time, you may have thought school was just boring, or that your professors were too busy trying to earn a paycheck, trying to blend in and to gain the approval of their superiors. And like something wasn't right. They weren't creative enough. They weren't smart like you. You think it was just an accident. It was a misunderstanding that they didn't see that you were creative. And this is how a lot of people feel. I'm not talking about just myself. And I'm not saying that you have to be a genius to disagree with your professor about something, but it's pretty catastrophic of just spending your whole life in these classrooms learning this repetitive information and being kind of segregated, like, oh, well, you're not as intelligent, so we're going to put you in the less intelligent group of the layers of the different dumb groups that is the education system. And then you have all these Harvard people and the Ivy League people who only get into these schools because they're rich. And this strange coincidence that all the Ivy League people also happen to come from rich, wealthy families. And occasionally you have what I like to call squeakers, where they sort of squeak through the cracks. They're my little squeakers. And we've created this religion of squeakers where like people like Barack Obama or Oprah, they're the squeakers. They exist to promote the idea that equality or democracy is something that exists within the system of capitalism. But the truth is that it's very rare for anyone who is born poor to join the wealthy elite. They are very good at keeping their own people in power. In fact, they are so good that they have been doing this for thousands of years, maneuvering their bloodlines, their descendants, into positions of leadership. That's why the Rothschilds continue on and on. It's so ancient that the name Rothschild apparently is actually influenced or based on the Egyptian god Ra. And yeah, it doesn't sound quite the same, but I find this to be very compelling. And there are quite a lot of the people maybe the 700 people I found that I consider to be those who are actually actively talking about these subjects, who are trying to promote consciousness on the planet. Those 700 people, among this sphere of what we might call alternative history, or like unveiled history beyond the veil, history beyond the illusion. These people seem to think Rothschild comes from Ra. They're paying homage to these ancient traditions. But it's kind of hilarious that we think of ourselves as this sophisticated empire of science and modernism, when really we're doing these repetitive satanic rituals of watching TV all the time and going to work for 8 hours. And apparently all of us are supposed to clean somebody's toilet for $12 an hour and just never question and be like, oh, it's science! It's science! You'll clean my toilet for $12 because of science, science. And like you go to school and you learn these advanced mathematics and logarithms and quadratic equations, and that's just in high school. And then you go to college and you learn even more sophisticated things. I learned about quantum mechanics and the structure of randomness and grandiose things. And they're like, okay, now bitch, you're gonna work in the grocery store for $12. I'm sorry, all the other jobs were sold out to the boomers. And yeah, the boomers are whatever, but the boomers aren't the true source of the problems in society. It's so much deeper. It's connected to the deep state, and yes, it's real, and you have to be courageous to even point this out, because you're going to get hated or whatever. But the deep state and the CIA are very connected. I like to think of the CIA as being the arm of the deep state. There is truly no shortage to the number of things that have gone wrong on this planet. Some even believe that aliens have visited us, but instead of coming and using their technology to bring peace, they had secret meetings with our wealthy elite. And ultimately we're told that, oh no, everything is great, and let's just on the down low not tell anybody about this and just keep everything the way it is. But on the down low, we would like your titanium and we would like your batteries, and they made these like secret trades apparently. But it's funny to think of aliens coming and having the technology to basically end world hunger, but instead they just do secret business deals with our already corrupt clown show leaders, like just making them more corrupt, more conspicuous. It's like, oh, thank you, aliens. That's kind of an epic fail. An epic fail on the alien administration there. That's a whole other topic, but that's what a lot of people seem to believe. Apparently, there are millions of people who believe they've met aliens. And yes, a lot of them were probed in the butt, but it's not all the aliens that's a specific category of aliens called the gray aliens that are doing that. So the gray aliens aren't so awesome. They're definitely going to poke you in the butt, and that's not cool. I'm not down with that, but that we shouldn't be racist towards all aliens just based on what a particular species does. So I hope you can take that to consideration. Where do you even begin? Planet Earth, what went wrong? I feel like there are like infinite detours, infinite thought trees to branch out on. You could talk about how big pharma created fake science and managed to deceive everyone, achieving record corporate profits when they created this concept we call mental illness, which for some reason the masses still lap it up believing that's real. It's like, well, I'm a mentally ill person, that's why I should get paid $12 an hour to clean Rockefeller's toilet or Rothschild's toilet, and while he can spend $1 trillion to start wars for fun. Yay! War is fun! The neurotypicals like doing war for fun, but we, the autistic people, have to learn the social skills and get paid $12. One day I could be a neurotypical and start a war in Iran, because that's the 7th place on Dick Cheney's list. And if only I could be more of a neurotypical like Dick Cheney. Or maybe George Bush Sr. If only I could enjoy war profiteering. Mental illness was created with fake science. I know this. I've lived it. I've debunked it. There are entire videos of people debunking this. But this is the problem. The videos get taken down. Videos get deleted. They're filtered out of the algorithm and they're censored.
You've undoubtedly been told you're mentally ill for daring to say that the emperor called psychiatry has no clothes, not to mention stupid and unscientific. At least this is what some of my colleagues say about me at one university. So if this is something that has happened to you, I'm here to say that you're not alone. The controversy regarding the myth of mental illness and psychiatry is not about science or medicine, it's about power. When psychiatrists start agreeing with you, well, then perhaps you ought to reconsider your position. Something may be wrong. So I'd like to say a few disobedient things, which is especially true because I was trained as a psychologist, and when a member of the profession criticizes its own, it's considered especially sacrilegious. What do we know that is true, that the cult of psychiatry keeps telling us is false? First, the idea that there is a known brain lesion causing mental illness. The truth is, we cannot tell who is mentally ill and who is not by looking at pictures of their brains or analyzing their blood. Psychiatrists had to invent their own book of diseases because pathologists would have nothing to do with them. It's called the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual for Mental Disorders, the DSM, a great work of fiction. What's the difference? What's the difference between the DSM and a scientific book of disease? Every disorder in the DSM is invented. Every disease listed in a pathology textbook is discovered. Real disease is found in a cadaver at autopsy. Mental illness is not. Mental illness refers to something that a person does. Real disease refers to something that a person has. Consider this yet another way. It takes one person to have a real disease. It takes two people to have a mental illness. If you're alone on an island, you could develop a real disease like cancer or heart disease, but you cannot develop a mental illness such as hyperactivity or schizophrenia. This is because mental illness is always diagnosed on the basis of some sort of social conflict. When people do something that others find objectionable, they can be diagnosed as mentally ill. If the person doing the diagnosing is more powerful than the person diagnosed, then there is trouble. In this sense, the diagnosis of mental illness is always a weapon. Not so when it comes to diagnosing real disease. Think of how, when people get angry with one another, they inevitably resort to some kind of diagnosis. They say, "You're crazy. You're mentally ill. You're paranoid." Can you imagine somebody getting angry with someone and saying, "You have diabetes. You have Parkinson's disease"? Social conflict has nothing to do with developing a real disease. You don't develop diabetes because someone doesn't like the way you think, speak, or behave. You have to have someone else present to judge that your behavior is morally good or bad in order to have a mental illness. So diagnosis is a weapon, a tool people use against one another, especially when there is some kind of power conflict present.
But they're very compelling videos of very professional people explaining how easy it is for wealthy people to manipulate statistics. And they did 52 experiments, and only 2 of the experiments showed that medication improved supposed mental illness. So they published 2. So it's like 2 out of 52, which is basically nothing. It's selective publishing. They only publish when they get the results they want, the results that make them money. But the problem is people are new to the world. They're naive and they haven't been around long enough to see the system betray you, to see the cracks in their tapestry, to see that the medication doesn't work, that it doesn't do anything. There are obviously so many negative effects to these medications. And what's so ironic is that you could be mentally damaged and still figure out what's actually going on here. You could count the number of people on your hand that are involved in this. It's the same guy who's involved in the education system. It's this Rockefeller guy. Like, I'm trying to be intelligent, I'm trying to get all the information, but I don't even have to be intelligent to figure this out. It's like the same 3 people. Like, it's the same 3 corporations wearing a trench coat pretending to be America. You could be mentally damaged and still see through their illusion and still count on your hands the number of people who are hoarding all the wealth. And yes, I know this video will get like 2 views or 1 like, while a video of a girl twerking will get like 2 bazillion views. Like, wow, what does this video of the girl twerking say about our political climate and what we should do as a society? Because we live in a dead society. It's like a ghost town. People watch the news and that's all that takes place. People put on uniforms and call themselves scientists when their data, their theories and their facts have been manipulated. The board of science the head of the board of science is also the ExxonMobil CEO.
A study from the Public Accountability Initiative finds 13 members of the House Committee on Science, Space, and Technology collectively have received at least $98,270 in contributions from ExxonMobil employees and political action committees connected to the company. Those same 13 committee members recently launched a counter-inquiry into an investigation scrutinizing whether Exxon deliberately misled the public over the reality of climate change. New York Attorney General Eric Schneiderman launched the investigation into Exxon in November. Okay, so understand exactly what happened here. The New York Attorney General was like, whoa, we got evidence that these guys are covering up the fact that they knew about climate change. You can't do that. Let's dig deeper. Well, you would think that the federal government and the people on the science committee would be like, rock on, we're right there with you. You need resources, you need help. No, they launch a counter-inquiry. So in other words, they're like, we're going to go to bat for Exxon. We're going to go to bat for the fossil fuel industry. Now, people who are naive might go, well, it's just a difference of opinion as to whether or not the reality of climate change indeed is a reality and whether or not people were trying to hide stuff.
Nobody is home, people. When you get to the top of the ladder, there's no brain. There's nobody there. It's just a guy with oil trying to sell you more oil. But it's tragic, though, and it's earth-shattering because this is decades of work. This is their entire career for these people. They keep talking about, like, quantum gravity. That was made up.
And our youngest living Nobel laureate is now over the age of 70 because the field is not producing new results. They took a couple of theories, they cocooned them, string theory being preeminent among them, and they said all competitor theories will die, and in the field of physics it's called the only game in town. You try to do something else, your career comes to an abrupt end. Now, how do you fool the world's smartest people into a soft sunset? A soft sunset is one where you decommission something, but you don't tell the people being decommissioned that their careers are coming to an end. You get them to repeat something over and over again, that quantum gravity is the holy grail. Quantum gravity is the holy grail. All the questions center on what is the theory of quantum gravity. Quantum gravity is the holy grail of theoretical physics. You perseverate. And if you say something enough times, it becomes as if true. But if it was the Holy Grail, why is there no mention of it in the corpus of English language books before 1972, right before physics stagnated? It is because there is no theory of quantum gravity in the way that they're looking for it. Quantum gravity is safe.
They got to quantum physics and they were told, okay, you can't really proceed beyond this because then it becomes a threat to the oil market. They want us on gasoline, and they've literally broken down thousands of electric cars that were better than the ones than the ion batteries we use today.
Text of the 2006 documentary, Who Killed the Electric Car? The EV1 emerged from General Motors as a pioneering effort to address the growing concerns over air pollution, oil dependency, and the environmental impact of conventional vehicles. With 800 units available for lease, the EV1 quickly garnered a dedicated following, appreciated for its innovation, efficiency, and the statement it made about the potential for a cleaner automotive future. Yet, despite the enthusiasm it generated among a niche group of environmentally conscious drivers, General Motors announced the end of the EV1 line in 1999, a mere few years after its introduction. Their cause for discontinuing the EV once centered on economic considerations, primarily the limited driving range of the car's batteries, which they argued made the vehicle unprofitable to produce and maintain. According to General Motors, the technology at the time could not meet consumer expectations for range and convenience, making the EV a challenging proposition for widespread adoption. However, this explanation did not satisfy many observers. Skeptics and supporters of the EV speculated that there were other forces at play, specifically the influence of the oil industry. The argument goes that oil companies, whose business model relies on the continued dominance of internal combustion engine vehicles, viewed the advent of electric cars like the EV as a direct threat to their profits and market position. According to this perspective, pressure from these powerful interests led General Motors to not only discontinue the EV, but also to take extraordinary measures to erase its existence. A policy was issued by General Motors to hunt and destroy every last EV1. Rather than allowing the leased vehicles to remain with their enthusiastic users or preserving them as part of automotive history, General Motors systematically retrieved and crushed the EV1S, effectively ensuring that the technology would not advance beyond its prototype stage. This decision has been interpreted by many as an attempt to stifle the development of electric vehicle technology, keeping it from challenging the status quo of the automotive market. Today, as electric vehicles gain increasing market share and acceptance, the story of the EV1, with all its controversy and mystery,
created by some guy named Ali and like accidentally created by some guy. And there are entire documentaries about this. You can go look it up, but people don't look it up. People are so wrapped up in this dogma that they won't do the research. They won't look it up because they just believe what they're told. because they're brought into this world just believing what they're told. I found hundreds of these people, very intelligent people, very incredible people. I've written down their names, I've bookmarked them, I've liked their videos. You gather this whole list of these people. These are the people who are shifting consciousness. And yet many of them are afraid to just say it like it is, they all pull their punches. We're all afraid of the ghost in the closet and just to be like, hey, like we're being lied to. Nobody is home. Nobody is piloting the ship. There's no captain at the wheel. It's just Lockheed Martin and a secret military base. What they call the military-industrial complex. What they call the deep states. The CIA, the FBI, the NYPD, APAC, these corporations and black projects, these secret groups and military funding and weapons manufacturers, Boeing. Boeing's the really big one, but Lockheed Martin is the one you don't hear about as much. Supposedly they're not as big as Boeing, and yet they work on some very sophisticated stuff. And you could go knock on their door and ask them to show you what it is, and they would just give you a loop around and be like, oh, well, we're just doing some tanks, and they have kind of like a surface that they show you, like a false ceiling, but behind the curtain, they've got some very sophisticated stuff that they've been hiding for decades. And they're thwarting science so that they can hoard advanced technology, they can hire the most brilliant scientists, people like Bob Lazar.
I mean, all I've ever done is science-related stuff my entire life. So, I don't know, I guess the point is, do I really care what people I don't know think? And probably to some extent I do, but I don't dwell on it. I guess it is easier to discredit someone that you have no information on because you can just say anything about them and there's nothing to refute it. I mean, I feel privileged I got to work in it, so in some respects I shouldn't be allowed to complain. I've given the example of transporting a small modern-day portable nuclear reactor back into Victorian times and giving it to the scientists there. Well, back in that time, they didn't even know about radiation.